So Riot's decided to go with back-to-back massive patches as we've got another 32 champions being adjusted for 26.4. We've got nerfs to some OP picks like Kale, Kassadin, and Braum. Well, we've got some buffs to 4 off-meta junglers and a really big buff to Hexoptic's C44. So as always, we're here to keep you guys completely up to date with everything, as we're going to cover every single change you can expect to hit live servers for this upcoming Thursday, February 19th. And remember, if you're learning new tech, broken builds, or macro and wave control strategies from videos on YouTube, then you are already behind. By the time something hits your feed, it's either about to get patched or everyone already knows about it and knows how to play around it. That's why whenever our challenger players discover something new, I'm talking about new tech, broken builds, game-winning strategies, they post it immediately in our new meta updates course, weeks before you will ever see it on YouTube, Reddit, or TikTok. For instance, AP Vera's top lane was broken from the very first patch of the season, but the average player didn't even discover that until a few weeks later, while SkillCapped subscribers were notified before everybody else. And as a SkillCapped subscriber, you're going to get access to our newly updated Essentials course, covering everything you need to master Season 16, from fundamentals to advanced macro, or even our Bronze to Diamond series where we document hard-stuck players using only our content to climb through every single rank. And if that wasn't enough already, every single week our challenger players upload 10 full game commentaries breaking down exactly how to carry games on your chosen champion in your elo, explaining every single decision in real time. And best of all, you can get access to all of this and more completely risk-free, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every single penny back. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive one-time discount, completely risk-free today. So the one item being changed for this patch is Hexoptic's C44, and it's going to have its passive range for max damage imp lowered from 600 to 500. The duration of range increase on takedown is being increased, going from 6 to 8 seconds. So with the max damage amp range requirement dropping to 500, this is really going to open the item up on a lot more champions. There's a few ADCs who have a range over 600, but the majority of ADCs have a range over 500. So we can see the item picked up on a lot of different champs now. Moving on to the champion buffs, we've got Annie in line for a Q damage buff, going from 80 scaling to 240 to 80 scaling to 260. E cooldown is dropping as well, from 12 scaling to 10 seconds to 10 seconds at all ranks. Riot has a couple of buffs planned for Brand Jungle, as his passive monster damage amp is going from 265 to 270%, while passive non-epic damage cap is up from 40 to 50. Camille is being issued a nice quality of life buff to her E, to where when she uses it off a wall, she no longer needs to hit a target in order to gain the attack speed boost. Darius Jungle might be back on the menu for 26.4, as Riot's increasing his passive monster damage, going from 200 to 250%. Fizz Jungle is going to receive a boost in strength as well, with his W monster damage going up from 60 to 90. Graves is going to be a bit more durable moving forward, as his E armor per stack is going from 4 scaling to 16 to 7 scaling to 19. E magic resist per stack is up as well, from 2 scaling to 8 to 3.5 scaling to 9.5. A few Hue buffs are on the way, with his WW base shield being increased from 100 scaling to 200 to 100 scaling to 260. WW effectiveness on allies is going up from 75 to 85%, while R cooldown is buffed pretty heavily early on, going from 140 down to 120 seconds. Illaoi is going to receive a passive base damage buff, as it's being increased from 9 scaling to 180 to 9 scaling to 200. Lux is going to be losing some base mana for this patch, as it's dropping from 480 to 440. However, her base mana regen is up from 7 to 9. Q cooldown is being adjusted from 11 scaling to 9 seconds to 10 seconds flat, while W cooldown drops from 14 scaling to 10 seconds to 12 scaling to 10 seconds. Maokai Jungle is on the buff list for this patch, with his Q bonus monster damage being increased from 120 scaling to 160 to 140 scaling to 180. Lifesteal effectiveness of Samira's Q and R both being increased for 26.4, going from 80 to 100%. So here, we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on Bloodthirster and Endless Hunger for 26.4, as Samira builds could see a massive shakeup here. Teemo Jungle is going to be issued a small buff, with his E monster damage amp going up from 145 to 160%. AD Udyr is going to become a bit stronger for this patch, with his Q base damage being increased from 5 scaling to 35 to 5 scaling to 45. W base shield is going up as well, from 45 scaling to 120 to 45 scaling to 145. So these Xayah buffs actually look pretty impactful impactful as her Q mana cost is dropping from 50 to 35. W cooldown is being lowered from 20 scaling to 16 seconds to 18 scaling to 14 seconds, while E mana cost is dropping from 30 to 20. Alright, moving on to all the champion nerfs now. Ambessa Jungle is going to be losing some power with Q bonus monster damage dropping from 150 to 125. Aphelios won't be gaining as much bonus AD from his passive as it's dropping from 5 scaling to 30 to 4 scaling to 24. Braum is going to be nerfed yet again as his R base damage is going down from 150 scaling to 450 to 150 scaling to 350. R cooldown does take a hit, going up from 120 scaling to 80 seconds to 130 scaling to 100 seconds. Riot has 2 nerfs planned for Gwen, with her Q base damage per snip dropping from 10 scaling to 30 to 10 scaling to 24. R base damage per needle is going down from 35 scaling to 95 to 30 scaling to 70. A Jinx nerf is on the way, with her armor growth being reduced from 4.7 to 4.2. Kassadin is going to be nerfed in 2 different ways, with his health growth dropping from 119 to 113, and E slow is going to go down from 50 scaling to 90% to 50 scaling to 70%. Kayle is going to receive a nerf to her Q damage as it's dropping from 60 scaling to 220 to 60 scaling to 180. Kennen's mid to late game is going to be nerfed pretty heavily, with his R cooldown going up from 120 scaling to 80 seconds to 120 seconds at all ranks. Naafiri is going to receive 3 nerfs in total, with her health regen going down, Q mana cost is being increased, and E mana cost is being increased as well. A scaling nerf is being issued to Qiyana as her health growth takes a dip, going from 121 to 115. Rengar is going to be losing some damage on his Q as Riot's shifting around a bunch of numbers here. The base is going to be lowered early but higher later, while the total AD ratio is higher early but nerfed later. So there's a lot going on here, but the change is under the nerf category, so we can definitely assume that they should land as a net negative. Rumble is going to be losing some early game power, with his base health dropping from 655 to 640, and then R base damage per second is being lowered from 140 scaling to 280 to 120 scaling to 280. Riot has 4 nerfs lined up for Swain, with his W slowdown going from 50 scaling to 70% to 50% at all ranks. R AP ratio is going down from 5 to 4%. R2 AP ratio takes a hit as well, being lowered from 50 to 40%, while R2 decaying slow is dropping from 75 to 50%. One of the better mages in recent patches, Syndra, is going to have her W base damage reduced from 70 scaling to 210 to 70 scaling to 190. R base damage per sphere is being lowered from 90 scaling to 170 to 80 scaling to 160. Twitch is going to be receiving a small nudge to his scaling strength for 26.4, as his health growth is dropping from 104 to 98, and armor growth is going to go down from 4.2 to 4. Zac is going to have some numbers shifted around on his Q, and Riot has stated that these changes will be nerfed up until he gets the spell fully maxed out. Our max base damage is being reduced from 350 scaling to 700 to 300 scaling to 650. Rise R is going to receive a pretty interesting change to where it no longer predicts where you want to walk, and it'll simply grab you if you're inside of the circle. And then Senna is going to receive a few adjustments, with her Q base damage being lowered, however the bonus AD ratio is going up. Same thing for W, as base damage is also down, however the AD ratio is up as well. So what these changes are doing is they're being issued to help out Senna's AD builds while nerfing her enchanter setup that's outperforming right now. Okay guys, one last thing. Our rank up guarantee is absolutely insane. It's kind of like signing up for the gym and then just getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with the top players, the rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb as easy as possible. If you're ready to level up, just visit SkillCapped.com and literally see the difference. So there you have it, everyone. Those are all of the changes that we can expect to hit live servers for 26.4, which is going to drop this upcoming Thursday, February 19th. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see ya in the next one.